Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Penn Vicarage on this Friday morning. Lovely to see you. I hope you are well and cheerful and looking forward to a good weekend. Just to remind you, over the weekend, we have some services you can join with us online. We have at 5:30 on Saturday evening, a meditation, Nicodemus this time. Sunday morning at 10 o'clock, a live stream service from St. Bart's, 11:45 a service from St. Anne's, and 5:30 an online choral evensong from St. Bart's as well. So lots of things going on this weekend. Do come and join us for our worship. We'd love to see you. And isn't it great that we can worship together in this way? Friends, we are working our way through towards the back end now of the first letter of Paul to the Corinthians. And I'm picking it up at chapter 14, and I'm going to start at verse 20. Brothers and sisters, do not be children in your thinking, rather be infants in evil, but in thinking be adults. In the law it's written, by people of strange tongues and by the lips of foreigners I will speak to this people, and even then they will not listen to me, says the Lord. Tongues then are a sign not for believers but for unbelievers, while prophecy is not for unbelievers but for believers. If therefore the whole church comes together and all speak in tongues, and outsiders or unbelievers enter, will they not say that you're out of your mind? But if all prophesy, if an unbeliever or an outsider who enters is reproved by all and called to account by all, after the secrets of the unbeliever's heart are disclosed, that person will bow down before God and worship him, declaring, God is really among you. What should be done then, my friends? When you come together, each one has a hymn, a lesson, a revelation, a tongue, or an interpretation. Let all things be done for building up. If anyone speaks in a tongue, let there be only two or at most three, and each in turn, and let one interpret. But if there's no one to interpret, let them be silent in church, and speak to themselves and to God. Let two or three prophets speak, and let the others weigh up what is said. If a revelation is made to someone else sitting nearby, let the first person be silent. For you can all prophesy one by one, so that all may learn and be encouraged. And the spirits of prophets are subject to the prophets, for God is a God not of disorder, but of peace. As in all the churches of the saints, women should keep silent in the churches, for they are not permitted to speak, but should be subordinate, as the law also says. If there's anything they desire to know, let them ask their husbands at home. For it's shameful for a woman to speak in church. Or did the word of God originate with you? Or are you the only ones it has reached? Anyone who claims to be a prophet or have spiritual powers must acknowledge what I am writing to you is a command of the Lord. Anyone who does not recognize this is not to be recognized. So, my friends, be eager to prophesy, and do not forbid speaking in tongues, but all things should be done decently and in order. And this is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Well, my friends, I think this passage is really about how we worship in church. For many of us who've been in church and members of the church a long time, I think we don't realise, I think we forget sometimes how strange must be some of the things that we do, must look to anybody else. I remember once someone saying to me at St. Bart's, said to me once, just what is going on at the front during a communion service? Good question. I know what's going on, but to somebody else it might look a bit of a mystery. I remember as a kid, or as a young Christian, the big debate was, did you like the ASB or the BCP? And did you like it accompanied by did you like the NIV, the NRSV, the KJV, or the simple version, which was the TEV? You see what I mean? For those people in the know, that's fine. But for those who didn't understand, they must have felt a bit left out. And I suppose the first century equivalent would be somebody in the Corinthian church standing up and speaking in tongues. Sure, they may know what they're talking about, as we know what we're talking about, some things we do in church sometimes. But Paul is arguing here, this actually carries with it a bit of a danger. Firstly, the outsiders coming in, and they hear someone gabbling on in tongues, or they hear us talking bizarre terms that they don't understand or whatever. The outsider is just going to think, what is going on here? But not just that, but actually people who are already in the church who don't know the terminology may also feel second-rate Christians or undermined or out of the loop or out of the clique or whatever, and therefore their faith may get undermined. So what Paul is suggesting here is that, be it in tongues, but actually be it in the situation in the church today, I would suggest, we need to do what we can to make it so that what we do is not cliquey, that what we do is accessible. And of course, there will be things that we do at the front of church or whatever it may be, and liturgies that we use, and that is absolutely fine. But we need to make sure that we do what we can in as inclusive way as we can, so that people feel part of it, so people don't feel excluded. People don't just think, what's going on here? People don't feel like second-rate Christians, but they feel part of it. So what I think Paul is talking about here is in our worship, the importance of being inclusive, of including as many people as possible, so that no one feels out of it, second class, out of the loop, that everyone feels involved as much as we can. That's the first thing. The second thing is, I think it's about order, actually. And I'm going to duck around this one about women keeping silent. I think I'll talk about that another day. It's there, but it kind of doesn't really fit in that chapter. But I may look at that another day, but I'm going to go over that one. But I do think that apart from being inclusive, what this chapter is really about, it's about order. And the trouble with order in church is it sounds boring, but I don't think it is, actually. A free-for-all is actually not very freeing. A total free-for-all in church would actually be total chaos. No one would get anything started. You don't know when you start. You don't know when you're beginning. You wouldn't know what's happening next. It just doesn't really work. A free-for-all is actually not very freeing. Things need to be done with some kind of an order. You know, when you watch a football match, people might not like always what the referee says, but actually, without a referee, without the rules, the game doesn't work. And actually, the same is true with church, actually. Things do need to be done in a structure. Things do need to be done with a degree of order. I don't mean a straitjacket, of course, there needs to be freedom within that, but there does need to be some kind of structure. People do need to know what's going on. People do need to know what's happening next. People do need to know what time they put their Sunday lunch on or whatever it may be. There does need to be order, because actually a free-for-all is not very freeing. A free-for-all doesn't help. And therefore, what Paul is saying here is to these Corinthians, bear in mind this is a very, very new church. Bear in mind they've experienced freedom in Jesus that they've never had before. What Paul is saying here is that your church, your service should not be a free-for-all. There should not be chaos. There needs to be order out of chaos. And things do need to be done with a structure. You can be free within that structure, but church services do need to have some kind of structure, not as a straitjacket, but actually a structure which we can hang the service on so people kind of know where they are. People can feel free within that structure. So 2 things so far. We've got the importance of being inclusive and welcoming and being as open and as welcoming, as inclusive as many people as possible in what's going on, so people feel part of it. Secondly, there's the importance of order, doing things with a degree of structure. But I think in the middle, there's this fascinating little bit about a person who's an unbeliever, who basically feels convicted, suddenly feels convinced, and then they become a Christian quite dramatically, a bit like Paul did, dare I say, on the Damascus Road. What is interesting is what made the person become a Christian in this reading this morning. It's not because they were attracted by the fabulous preaching necessarily, or they might have been. It's not because they were the beautiful music or the love of the people or anything like this. If you read it carefully, what really convinces this person is that they felt God turned up. And that's the big thing. And I think that actually is the key, the absolute key to worship. Worship is about engaging with God. If we don't engage with God, we're just doing a ritual. We might as well go to a theatre or what, you know. Worship is about engaging with God. If we meet with God in worship, that's what worship is all about. Meeting with God is what inspires us in our faith. Meeting with God is what our faith is all about. And it's meeting with God in worship that's going to convince somebody else to become a Christian as well. So there's some big stuff in this morning's reading and some very important lessons to us about the way we do services in church. Firstly, the importance of making sure that we are as inclusive as possible, that people feel part of it and in the loop rather than excluded or second-class Christians or whatever. The importance also of doing things with a degree of order, the degree of structure, freedom within it, but having a structure there so that we know where we are, so we can feel free and we can worship God because we have a God of order, not of disorder. But finally, and the absolute key, is that we need to, in all things, the way we do services is to make sure that we do everything we can to make it so that we can engage with God. And also to make sure that we take out anything that stops us engaging with God. Because worshipping God is about engaging with God And that's what our worship's all about. God bless you. Have a lovely day. And I'll see you hopefully over the weekend at services. And I'll see you back again on Monday morning when we're looking at the